Hi, how's everybody tonight? So, like he said, I'm a DACA recipient, and I was brought here when I was 2 years old, and I didn't ask for this life, but here I am. I go through, these are some daily things that I go through. So the first thing I want to talk about is potential deportation for my father. His name is Cesar Salazar. He has gotten stopped by the cops 3 times for driving illegally without a license, and next time he gets stopped by the cops, he will get deported. There's no doubt about it. They will arrest him, take him to prison, and deport him. Another similar situation that I want to talk about is my friend's dad. She goes to high school with me. She's a sophomore, and her dad got deported already, so it scares me, and it puts no doubt in my mind that it will happen to my father because they already did it to someone else's father. And that just really scares me and puts me in a hard situation. Like every time we go out to drive, even to go out to the gas station, like 5 minutes away from my house, in the back of my mind, I'm like, if we see a cop, we have to go right back home because they're gonna stop him or they're gonna do something to deport him. Another situation I wanna talk about is my sister. She's a DACA recipient as well, and it took her 9 months to get her license and her Social Security from the government because her application got suspended. This was very hard on my family because she could not drive us around the city because she did not have a license for 4 months straight. And we didn't have any way to get to school, any way to get to, like, my parents just had to drive illegally again, and she's the only one who has a license in my family right now. So we depend on her a lot. And it's just scary to think that for 9 months she didn't have a license and we had to go through the struggle without not driving with someone who doesn't have a license. And we use her a lot because we use her license plates on my mom's car. So when they type up her license plates, it's on my mom's car. And when they type up the license plate, it shows up Karen Salazar, and it doesn't. She's a woman, of course, so they won't stop her because they think that she has a license and her record's clean, and she hasn't gotten any tickets. She has a clean record, so they won't stop her, obviously. And my dad has her license plates too, but he's a man, so they're obviously going to be like, well, why is it under this name, and like it's going to look sketchy. Another thing I want to talk about is my family has been talking about moving back to Mexico this past this upcoming summer. They want to move back because they're scared. They don't know what to do. It hurts me to sit in my living room and watch my parents watch the news, and they literally are just telling me, like, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do for our daughters? Like, we brought them here for a better life, but now look what it's bringing them. It's bringing them suffrage. It's bringing them, it's hurting them to know that we're, like, every day they're mortified about the news because Donald Trump, there's not one day that Donald Trump isn't on the news saying something that scares us to death, or just like, there's not one day that, like, in the news that he just doesn't stop with his outrageous things, and he just signs off on executive orders like it's nothing. And like, he just signs off like it's just a piece of paper, and like, oh, I'm just gonna sign it real quick, like nothing's gonna happen, there's not gonna be no impact on the world. And it hurts me too. Like, every day, my dad sits in the kitchen table, and he watches the news, and he's like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. Like, we have to go back to Mexico. Like, he tells me every day, he's like, I can't live here anymore, exposing myself, driving around the city without a license. I can't, like, he wants to go back so bad because he hasn't seen his mom in 10 years, like 12 years. And, like, that hurts me because, I mean, that's your parents. Like, if I didn't see my dad for 12 years, like, you need your mom in your life. Like, I remember he FaceTimed his mom, and his mom started crying because she was like, she didn't see his face for 9 years. And when she cried, I started bawling. I was like, that's not fair. That's not fair that we can't go back to our country and visit our family members and be with them and share love with them that we have for them. I know that my grandma is grateful enough to come here every summer for at least 3 months. But if she exceeds that 6 months, she can't go back because she's going to become an illegal immigrant. But she comes to visit us every month because she still walks, and my dad's mom doesn't walk. She's in a wheelchair. So that's another reason why we want to go back, because we're not able to care for her, and we're not able to like help her. And everybody in my family back in Mexico, and my dad's side of the family, already has a life. They have their house, they have their kids. They can't just stop it completely just to take care of their mother because she is in a wheelchair. Like, I mean, I know it sounds kind of rough and like rude, but like it's just they have their own life already, like builded, and like they have their house and their kids and their husbands. They have to go to work every day. Like, how are they not going to go to work every day and then just like not get any income? Like, how are they going to pay the rent? How are they going to pay the water bill? Like, I don't understand why it's like has to be this way, because my dad, he's like, if I go back, there's no doubt about that I'm going to stay home every day and just take care of my mom for the next years, because he doesn't have much time left with her. Like, she has type 2 diabetes. She's been in the hospital 5 times already, and she's severe. Like, she could lose her life at any moment. And to know that my dad can't go back to her funeral or even to say goodbye, like, that hurts me in my heart, because I know how much he loves her. And my mom wants to go back because she hasn't seen her sisters in 15, 17 years. She got in a fight with her sister for 10 years, and she stopped talking to her sister for 10 years, and she had no contact with her at all. And they recently just started talking again, and my sister, her sister's husband, he got shot because, he got stabbed to death by this drug dealer in Mexico, because he's a taxi driver, so he got stabbed to death. And when I see my mom cry, I'm like, I cry, I hold her hand, and I'm like, I don't want to see you sad. I don't want to see you crying. I hate seeing you cry in front of me. I cry in front of her. Every time I'm a sucker for tears, so if you cry in front of me, I'm gonna start bawling. But she just cries to me every day, and she cries in front of, we're very religious, so she cries in front of like our stand in the house where we have the Virgin Mary and God, and we have a picture of her. She cries every night, and she asks him, why did you take him away? Why did you take him away? Like, and to me, that she can't go back to Mexico just because she's an illegal immigrant, that's not fair to me, because like that's her family that died. Like, he got stabbed to death for some stupid drug dealer that wanted some drugs and money. Like, and that puts fear in my heart, because what if we go back? Like, what's our life going to be like? Is our life going to be that bad? Like, are we going to get stabbed to death while we're walking on the street trying to get some food or trying to go to work? Are we going to get stabbed to death because some stupid drug dealer doesn't have some money or some drugs to feed his addiction? Like, that, to me, that's so absurd, and it just really, it doesn't make sense in my head how people can be so cruel sometimes. And Mexico's, I hate to say this, but it's so corrupt nowadays. And just like they go after people who they don't even know, and their family members. They're not even their family members. They don't even know them. They just want the money. They don't care. And if they don't give them the money, they're just going to kill them on sight. And unfortunately, that's what happened to my uncle, who I didn't know very well, because obviously I didn't live with him or talk to him that much. But I know that my mom's sister, she has 11 kids, and those kids now are living without a father because of some drug dealer's addiction, and he just wanted money. So now my mom's struggling to work double time. She has to work overtime at least till 5 o'clock in the afternoon just to get her overtime. Sometimes they won't even let her put overtime anymore, because it's just like, you put too much overtime, you can't work anymore. You just can't work anymore. So, and then like, she has to send at least $200 to them every month so they can pay their uniforms, they can have food in the refrigerator, and they can have a roof to sleep in. And I mean, I don't care. Like, if that means that I have to work harder for my things, then so be it. Like, I don't care. Like, I will work hard. I have a job. I know how to work hard. I'm a Latina, young, strong woman, and I know how to work. I can go to work every day, get my money, get my paycheck every Friday, and at least buy my own food, buy my own clothes, buy whatever I want, not have to ask them for money because I know they're already struggling with money. They struggle with money a lot because I got in a fight with my sister, a domestic violence dispute. We're not talking right now, and it really just puts a toll on me. I don't know what I'm gonna do. I don't know how I'm gonna fix it, but I have to fix it soon because I'm going back to Mexico to live there, and if I don't fix it, then we potentially won't be talking for the rest of our lives. We won't have connection and it's over some stupid fight, over some stupid clothes that the fight was over, and now we're not even talking. We don't even look at each other anymore. And I try to say hi to her, but she doesn't care. She doesn't know what she's gonna do, and if she's a DACA recipient, but then DACA only lasts you 4 years, and then you have to renew it every 4 years, and you don't even know if you're gonna renew it if they're gonna renew it for you, because if you do something bad, if you get stopped by the police by speeding ticket, they won't renew them because it says when you sign the contract, it says you cannot be involved in any legal dispute or any legal stuff with the police because there's a potential that you won't get your DACA papers and you won't get your DACA renewed. And so she's really nervous because I did call the police when she hit me, and I regret it so much because I knew how much that's going to affect her. But thankfully, God heard my prayers, and He didn't. There hasn't been a court date set up, and there hasn't been anything. She hasn't gotten any tickets in the mail. So that's really good. To me, just because God is hearing my prayers, and He's letting her DACA is safe. She can renew it and stay here longer if she wants to, because she does plan to stay here longer with my other sister, Cynthia. Cynthia is 19 years old. I'm 18 years old, and Karen is 24 years old, and we're all DACA recipients, and we all go through these daily struggles. And another thing I want to talk about, touch base, is not only my family will get separated and broken apart this summer, but other families have been broken apart and gotten deported and just gotten separated. And there's been families that have been torn apart because of Donald Trump and the new laws that he's putting in. As soon as you get, if you're driving without a license, you get stopped and you get deported. So yeah, so my family's getting broken apart. My friend's family got broken apart. This is another thing I want to talk about. There's kids in my school that chant Donald Trump 2016 on the school bus, and there's kids that make signs of Donald Trump, and they go to football games and they wear T-shirts "Make America Great Again." And to me, I feel very like a minority. And the last thing I want to touch base on is I was at a store recently with my friend, and the ladies were just talking about how they were just coming up to us oh, what are you gonna buy, or do you need help with anything, or can you tell us what you're gonna buy, because we're just walking around here you're gonna not gonna buy anything. And we were kind of just well, we're looking, we don't have to buy something just to be in the store. We're looking we're just looking. And that, I think they only did that because we're Hispanic and I thought we were gonna steal, but that's not the case. I was raised well by my parents, and that's not what I do. So yeah, that's just my story.
Thank you. Like you said, my name is Heather, and I'm here representing the Madison chapter of NOW. Thank you to the Madison Socialist Alternative for organizing this and for giving us some time to talk about our upcoming direct action for reproductive freedom. Madison Now would like to invite all of you to join us in a peaceful showing of support at Affiliated Medical Services in Milwaukee on Friday, April 14th. And to please share this event with any of your pro-choice, feminist friends and family. Affiliated Medical Services in Milwaukee is one of only 3 abortion providers left in the state of Wisconsin. Every year, they face a Good Friday protest by a group of anti-choice individuals. The protesters are abusive and harassing to clinical staff and to the patients seeking health care. Given the clinic's location, patients coming to the clinic cannot avoid walking down the street past these protesters. We feel it is imperative to present a peaceful counter-protest to the anti-choice, abuse, and interference, both for the patients present that day and as a public display of support for reproductive freedom. If we continue to let anti-choice demonstrators, organizations, and politicians define the conversation around reproductive rights in our state, they will continue to erode and eventually eliminate abortion access. As it is, meaningful access has already been curtailed for people outside of the Madison and Milwaukee areas without the means to travel for services. It's essential we defend reproductive rights through visible, direct action before we lose our remaining clinics and our rights for good. For the last few years, pro-choice activists from Madison and Milwaukee have joined forces to offer Affiliated Medical Services and its patients our love and support. We organize a peaceful counter-protest, effectively providing a barrier between the anti-choice protesters and people entering the clinic. Last year, our counter-protesters arrived about 30 minutes before the anti-choicers and outnumbered them. The result was that the anti-choicers dispersed after only about a half an hour. Given that last year was a great success, a counter-protest will be held again this year. Good Friday is April 14th. The action in Milwaukee will take place between 9 a.m. and noon. A bus has been arranged for activists to go from Madison to Milwaukee. The bus will leave from the Chazen Museum, which is right out there on University. It will leave at 7:30 a.m. and return to Madison about 1:30 p.m. We ask those taking the bus for a donation of $10 to help cover the cost of the ride. We would like to fill at least one bus, so about 60 people. And we would be absolutely thrilled if we could reserve a second bus. So to that end, we're asking anyone interested in more information to either sign up on the list. There's one out front at the table there, next to the Madison Women's Center, or the Campus Women's Center information. You can also find it on our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/nowmadison. There's a link on our Facebook to the Eventbrite page, and you can reserve a seat on the bus ahead of time. Seats will be first come, first serve, so please reserve a seat early. It also helps us determine if there's enough interest to have a second bus. There will also be a sign-making and button-making party in advance of this action on Saturday, April 2nd at 1 p.m. Details of that and the location will be determined and posted on the Madison Now Facebook page. And it will also be emailed to anybody who signs up on our list for more information. And of course, you are invited to Madison Now's monthly meetings. Second Tuesday of the month. This month it's going to be next week, March 14th, 6:30 p.m. at the Central Branch of the Madison Public Library. So thank you very much for your time this evening.
Hello, how's it going? I am honored to be here with all of you tonight. It's just been absolutely incredible to see and hear about all the walkouts that went down today, the schools that were shut down, to hear about the masses that participated in a day of defiance against misogyny, sexism, and Trump's reactionary views. And I think it inspiring to see International Women's Day return back to its militant working class roots, especially since this year marks the 100-year anniversary since the 1917 Russian Revolution, in which women played a prominent role in fighting to end suffering under the compounding forces of an oppressive czar and unforgiving patriarchy. For too long, though, March 8th has been showcased in the media to glorify the individual success and advancement of women CEOs and celebrities, focusing on the feminization of the elite, whose interests preserve business as usual at the cost to working class women. Because it's just not enough to have women in power. It's what they represent that matters. And sections of society are beginning to see through the illusions of this elite feminism that we have been bombarded with through media over the years. And these sections of society want to reclaim International Women's Day and are keen on returning it back to the militant working class roots that this day was founded on. And so we've seen in recent years, even before the swelling of the anti-Trump anger, that there has been a radicalization of women and youth who are just fed up with the status quo that fosters an increase in sexism and the objectification of women's bodies in mass media, an increase in poverty, unequal pay for equal work, violence against women where 1 in 3 women experience physical or sexual violence. And so as a result of these political and economic attacks deployed against working class women, a new feminist awakening has emerged, representing those who have been left behind by corporate feminism. We've seen massive women's strikes in Poland against the abortion ban, strikes in Latin America against male violence. In the US, we've seen women play a huge role in movements like Black Lives Matter, fighting for increased reproductive rights and for an anti-rape culture on college campuses. And it is important to acknowledge the fact that these recent movements have been overtly critical of capitalism. And we need to ask ourselves why. The answer is that capitalism profits from the exploitation of women. It fosters this idea of a nuclear family that places the man as the head of the household and subjugates the woman as his property. Capitalism exploits the important role women play as child bearers for a future workforce and the disproportionate burden of unpaid domestic labor. And it is capitalism that allows a culture where ideas that perpetuate violence against women are fostered. And it is during this discussion that we make sure that when we talk, I'm sorry, I'm gonna cough. I'm struggling with a cold too, so. Yeah, okay. I'm on a lot of DayQuil, I am trying not to cough. And so it is during this discussion that we make sure that when we talk about women under attack, we are inclusive of all who identify as a woman, because you don't need to have a vagina to be a woman, you know? We are on a major front against Trump's sexist and misogynist agenda that aims for massive attacks on reproductive rights by means of defunding Planned Parenthood, huge cuts to public services, already in a system that has never had paid maternity leave, fully accessible child care, adequate women's health care services, to cut wages in a workforce that profits from income inequality, where women are already a majority of low-wage workers and make up a majority of tipped workers who make a sub-minimum wage of $2.13. And a reactionary agenda that pursues to denigrate and demonize queer and trans rights. So as we talk about building a movement to defeat Trump's bigoted agenda, we need to underscore the fact that capitalism and sexism go hand in hand, that capitalism and violence against women go hand in hand, capitalism and racism go hand in hand, oppression in all forms capitalism goes hand in hand. And this link is crucial because Trump is the embodiment of our predatory capitalist system. I think of him as a symptom of our capitalist disease, a symptom that is sustained by the maximization of profits for a tiny elite who works so hard to artificially pit us against each other in order to weaken working class solidarity. This is why we have to link the fight against Trump to an anti-capitalist struggle, that we fight against Trump and the billionaire class with the broadest possible unity of forces to defend immigrant rights, LGBTQ and women's rights, Black and Latino lives, labor unions, and the environment. We need all hands on deck for a mass struggle of nonviolent civil disobedience, Complacency is out the door. Apathy is out the door. If we are timid, we paralyze ourselves as targets to a firing squad of reactionary measures that seek to divide and conquer us. And so with that being said, I think it is so important that we do not compromise the struggle by relying on the Democratic Party to lead the anti-Trump resistance. We cannot be limited by the leadership of the corporate Democrats who are bankrolled by Wall Street and place big business before the interests of ordinary people. This is just one of the many reasons why we need a strategy of grassroots struggle, independent of corporate influence, to fight for an alternative vision of a society and fight for working class demands like an end to mass deportations, police brutality, mass incarceration, a $15 an hour minimum wage, high quality contraceptive care, safe, accessible abortions that are available when needed, quality housing, tuition-free education, and much more. And so here we are 100 years since the first International Women's Day, and we are still fighting inequality, we are still fighting for women's rights, we're still fighting against capitalism. And I just think, wouldn't it be great to know that maybe 100 years from this day, our future generations will be celebrating the liberation of humanity in a society free from oppression, racism, sexism, Islamophobia, transphobia. I have like a couple more lines, I'm good. A society built on genuine liberation, one through a socialist transformation of society, where everyone has a shot at a decent life. That world is possible, but it's only if we stand up and fight for it together, shoulder to shoulder. Only if we dare to rise do we have a shot at a better world to come. Thank you.
How y'all doing? All right, I've been in the car for 5 hours, so I'm going to put some energy into this because I got to drive 5 hours back. Hopefully it's not 5 hours. I want to start out by saying and be very clear that no human being is illegal. So as we've heard today, the many threats and obstacles that lies ahead for the liberation of not just women, but for all people in the age of Trump, it is all our rights that are under attack, and we should be very clear of this. And it should be made clear today that when we talk about the full liberation and equality for women, we mean full liberation and equality for all women. It is time to expose the system. The gig is up. The illusions, the myths, the glass ceilings, the social constructs, all the lies of capitalism are being exposed today. And when we talk about a strategy, particularly a socialist strategy, to defeat Trump, we must begin by peeling back each and every lie that has been sold to us by the capitalist class about each other. And after we expose the lies in our journey on the path of seeking truth and liberation, we make it very clear to the capitalist class, and I want to use the words of James Baldwin, we, the people, are responsible for our own liberation. We are not begging for it. It is up to us to take it. So how does the women's movement defeat Trump and the GOP? What are the strategies? And I say strategies because it is our responsibility as people to understand the different ways that women in society are oppressed. We don't ignore those differences. We don't use those differences to silence one another. We use it to advance our understanding of the many different ways this society, this economic system has been exploiting and oppressing us all. For example, when we talk about the fight for women's liberation, we must include undocumented and immigrant women. The Trump administration is going on a vicious offense, attacking immigrant families, separating children from their mothers, as we heard today, locking them in detention centers. And we saw The power of the working class when the airports were shut down after Trump's executive order banning immigrants from majority Muslim countries. The fight for women's liberation cannot exclude undocumented women. We don't have to go back very far in history to see how important immigrant and undocumented women have been to the advancement of labor and union rights and in the workplace here in the United States. For example, in the 1930s, which was a year of fierce class struggle and great advances for the working class, and from the beginning, women have been deeply involved in these struggles. I'll give you some examples. 1937, the historic victory of the Flint sit-in strike, which emboldened the whole working class to take things further. This was the first big sit-in of a mainly female workforce. Cigar workers in Detroit, where there were 4,000 women, most of them Polish, working in 6 shops, where the working conditions in these shops, where they would work 6 and 7 days a week, poor ventilation causing women to faint, and inadequate toilet facilities. But the determination and militancy of these women is some to be revered. On February 19th, 2,500 cigar rollers were sitting down. On March 20th, Detroit mayor launched a counterattack at the time, the mayor at the time. The police broke down the doors of the plant, dragging the fighting women out by their arms, clothing, and hair. Police beat sympathizers, even throwing a pregnant woman off her porch. 3 days later, 200,000 people protested in Cadillac Square. And by April 23rd, every cigar shop in Detroit had a union contract. That is the power. Let's give another example. In 1938, the pecan sheller strike in San Antonio, where Mexican women who were working 70 hours a week for as little as 30 cents a day, picking nut meat from shells by hand. In 147 shops, where 12,000 workers produce over 21 million pounds of shelled pecans per year, were closed by the strike. One of the demands of these workers was the right to strike without fear of deportation. 1,000 strikers and supporters were jailed during this. We can look 40 years ago, where the women in Iceland went on strike, where they refused to work, to cook, to look after children for a day. It was a moment that changed the way women were seen in the country and helped Iceland put at the forefront the fight for equality. On October 24th, 1975, 90% of women in the country decided to demonstrate their importance by going on strike. Instead of going to the office, doing housework or childcare, they took to the streets in the thousands to rally for equal rights with men. And it is known in Iceland as the Women's Day Off. We can look at October of last year, where, as mentioned, thousands of Polish women dressed in black boycotted work and took to the streets to protest a plan to ban abortions. Without half their workforce, government offices, universities, and schools in 60 cities across the country closed their doors. It is important when we talk about liberation for women are not detention centers. Liberation for women are not drone strikes. Donald Trump has launched a vicious attack on immigrant families and Mexican families. In response, we've heard a call for sanctuary cities. And that is extremely positive, that some elected officials are moving to have sanctuary cities. But it is important that cities are not just sanctuary in name alone, but practice. If immigrant women, undocumented women, can be forcibly removed from their children, their families through ICE raids, then that is not a sanctuary city. If immigrant and undocumented women can't afford housing, then that is not a sanctuary city. And if documented women can be deported for reporting domestic abuse, then that is not a sanctuary city. If immigrant and undocumented women don't have the support and worker protection of the labor unions they pay their dues to, then that is not a sanctuary city. Because if you are struggling to live in a city, if you are forced to live in poverty in a city, that city is not sanctuary for you. We need public officials, unions, schools to unconditionally reject the racist, sexist scapegoating of undocumented and immigrant women, to reject using public services to aid and assist in ICE raids. We need businesses to reject workplace raids and the harassing of their workers. We need the Democratic Party to refuse to negotiate the lives of immigrant and undocumented women with the right-wing Trump administration that are hell-bent on further destroying these families. And we say, unconditionally, no walls, no ban, no deportations. When we talk about women's liberation, I repeat, we must include all women, and that includes trans women of all race. We've seen the highest number of trans women killed in 2017 than any other year. Last week, 2 trans women were killed in New Orleans within a 48-hour period. And these are just the ones we know about, because in many cases they are misgendered by the police or the media. The reality is that in order to adequately address the toxic hatred of trans women is to address how rampantly ingrained homophobia and misogyny is in our society and our culture. We have to address the lies that have been sold to us by this capitalist system, by patriarchy. That there are specific functions designed for women and specific functions designed for men, and that's just the way it is. That's what they tell us. We have to accept that gender and sexuality is fluid. It changes. I'm getting to the point. I know it's not true. That's why I'm here. It's not a static thing. And when we talk about the liberation of trans women, we have to talk about the economics. If trans women are being denied housing, health care, the ability to pee where other women pee, like seriously, what else do you do in a bathroom? I need understanding, because I didn't know this, but have bathrooms been a place for the turn up, like where they're giving VIP guest lists to bathrooms? Did I miss something? Because honestly, for trans women to use women's bathroom is a net loss. I don't know if you've seen the lines in women's bathroom, but I would much rather use the men's bathroom, because if I have to pee, I don't want to wait 10 minutes for it. The fight for trans women cannot be separated from the issue for the fight for women's liberation and workers' liberation. So we must expand our movement to cover not just reproductive rights, but access to health care, access to hormone therapy, access to education, access to housing, the right to be safe and free from violence and murder. We know the stats and facts. Trans women live in constant fear of death for not just the police, but for members in their own communities, their own families. How backwards of a society have we become? We need to unite our struggles. The struggles of Black women have to be included in the movement to liberate all women. For Black women to fight against sexism, for Black women, the fight against sexism must include the fight against racism. We have to have an honest conversation about racism in this country, because Black women cannot be liberated if police are killing our children. Black women cannot be liberated if public education is being under attack in our communities. Black women cannot be liberated if, as workers, their jobs and their wages are being under attack. Black women cannot be liberated in a racist society. Now I've been channeling some James Baldwin lately, so we're going to channel him together, because I've been researching my James Baldwin. So I want to go back to him when he says, it's time to blow the whistle. It is time to begin to deal with the power structure. Women today still suffer because we still have in place a system of gender hierarchy and racial hierarchy that says women are inferior, weaker to men. That has nothing to do with biology. The attack on women's reproductive rights and abortion access is another example that under patriarchy, women's bodies are controlled by the male-dominant capitalist system. It is time to examine and overhaul the system. Now is not the time to use the rules of divide and conquer, to use the different ways that we are oppressed to silence each other. Trump is just another representative of the power structure. And we must resist the power structure and build a mass movement that fights against racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, economic inequality, and all the evils of capitalism. I say this, we cannot rely on old tactics. And most importantly, we cannot negotiate with the representatives of our oppressors. We've played their game. We believe their lie. We have to use our power. We have to learn from history. And history has shown us that our power is in the collective. Movements are our power. The ability to withhold our labor and withhold the ability for the capitalists to profit off of us is our power. And we need to escalate mass actions, including the call for using working class power like I mentioned in the past. We need the labor unions to say that we will strike, we will sit in, we will refuse to work unless women, all women, rights have been restored. We will use protests, blockades, and occupation, whatever is necessary by any means necessary, whatever it takes, because enough is enough. We need our political leaders and our union leaders to defend us. And when they fail to do so, we replace them and we build our own institutions that can. It doesn't stop today. Either it's time that we put out our demands, full abortion rights and accessibility, a $15 minimum wage, free health care, free child care, paid paternal leave, all paid for by taxing the profits of the billionaire class. We are here today. We are here today telling the billionaire class, you will not divide us. We coming to get our check. If the Democratic Party says it will fight for women's rights, then it will fight with our demands. We cannot sit back and wait for this to happen. We must organize and unite our struggles in a mass movement. And when I talk about uniting our struggles, I want to go to history because history is our best teacher. From an organization called the Kabahi River Collective in 1970, which was a queer feminist women of color organization. And in their statement where they talk about what led them to joining the fight against patriarchy and capitalism. And they said a combined anti-racist and anti-sexist position drew us together initially. And as we develop politically, we address ourselves to heterosexism and economic oppression under capitalism. We realize that the liberation of all oppressed people necessitates the destruction of the political economic system of capitalism and imperialism as well as patriarchy. We are socialists because we believe the work must be organized for the collective benefit of those who do the work and create the products and not for the profit of the bosses. Material resources must be equally distributed among those who create these resources. We need to articulate the real class situation of persons who are not merely raceless, sexist workers, but for whom racial and sexual oppression are significant determinants in their working and economic lives. We can no longer step on the necks of other women to break that glass ceiling. We can no longer internalize the logic and rules of capitalism and patriarchy. And we cannot support the institutions and political parties that do. The next steps is on May 1st, which is May Day, we bring back our radical traditions. We will not tolerate Trump, and we will show Trump and the billionaire class that their racist, sexist agenda will not be tolerated, that his racist, xenophobic agenda will not be tolerated, and that his attacks on workers will not be tolerated. On May 1st, we will unite our struggles with thousands, if not millions of people in the streets saying, you will not make a dime today. And how I like to say it, not today, boo. The lies have been exposed. Trump presidency is a blatant example of the failure of capitalism and the failure of the U.S. two-party political system. It's time for us to tell our truths. The capitalist class want to continue their quest for endless profits and domination. 6 people have more wealth than the combined 3.9 billion people on this planet. We will resist. And now is more than the best time than ever to join the organization, to get involved in the struggle. We need more women at the forefront, because don't get it twisted. A woman's place is not in the house. A woman's place is 100% in the struggle. And I appeal to you today to get in that struggle, to join an organization, to join Socialist Alternative, so I don't have to drive 5 hours here. Although I don't mind, I love it, I'll do it. And I'll end on this, which I think is a good summation of how I feel about any excuse or any arguments that support this current society, which is fuck capitalism, fuck patriarchy, fuck transphobia, and most importantly, fuck Trump. Thank you, solidarity.